This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one from Darren. And Darren asks whether, if we imagine a society that was built on an economy that was genuinely democratic, where worker co-ops democratically decided what happened in every enterprise, or almost every enterprise, factory, store, office, one person, one vote, determining what the company or the firm or the enterprise produces and what technology it uses and where the production happens and what's done with the fruits of the collective labor of the co-op. He asks us to imagine that and then follows it and says, would all traces of capitalism then be gone? Or, if not, is there a risk that if capitalism remains, it will simply overwhelm the democratic economic system and push the society back to the capitalism we have now? Let me respond to Darren in two ways. First, I don't think we ought to go in the direction of imagining a fully developed economic democracy. There's going to have to be, in all likelihood, a transition. Unless the capitalist system collapses in some total, dramatic, sudden disintegration, which is possible but not likely, absent that, we're likely going to have a transition. For example, the passage from slavery to feudalism in much of Europe took time. Didn't happen all at once. Didn't happen everywhere at the same time, and so on. The transition from feudalism to capitalism in Europe, say from the 16th through the 19th century, happened at different times in different places. There were backs and forths. It moved towards capitalism and away from feudalism, and then vice versa. It was not a straight line development. So it is reasonable to imagine that the transition from capitalism to whatever comes next will display a similar herky-jerky, backward and forward, uneven development. So my assumption is that yes, we will have societies, and indeed we already do, that exhibit both capitalist enterprises, where there are employers and employees, with the employers making all the decisions and the employees required to live with them, even though they're excluded from making them, which is what I understand a capitalist enterprise to be. And then there will be democratic enterprises, as there already are. Worker co-ops, organized here in the United States, more extensively in Italy and Spain and many parts of Europe, where workers, one person, one worker each person has a vote, decides democratically and collectively what all the workers in an enterprise want to do in the way of deciding what it will produce, how it will produce, where it will produce, and what will be done with the fruits of their collective labor. So we already have these societies that are mixed. I think what Darren is thinking about is a society where, let's say, the preponderance, the majority, perhaps even an overwhelming majority of enterprises are worker co-ops, economic democracies, but where there are also capitalist enterprises coexisting, enterprises of the familiar sort we have now, with a board of directors or an owner who controls everything and hires workers who come to work and do what they're told, but do not participate in making the major decisions that every business has to make. Is it then possible, Darren's question says, that the capitalism, even if it is a relatively small part, could outcompete, outgrow, eventually overwhelm the democratic part? And I think the answer, history suggests, is yes, it could happen. Most societies that we have any record of were coexistences of multiple different class structures. The societies we call slave had some feudalism in them. The societies we call feudal had some slavery and some capitalism in them. And all societies have had some worker co-op type enterprises in them. It's always a coexistence, which means it's always open exactly how the society is going to be developed. Part of what we call politics and culture and ideology is about the struggle as to which way society will develop, which kind of class system will become the prevailing one, the dominant one, the one that gives its name to the society even when other different class structures coexist with it. And those of us that might favor a democratic economic system, an economy based on worker co-ops, or what we like to call workers' self-directed enterprises, one of the things we will be doing in such a society, politically, ideologically, will be arguing why we believe in the economic system we advocate for and would prefer to see other businesses make a transition in that direction, and we would correspondingly fight against any effort to go otherwise, back towards capitalism, back towards feudalism and slavery. Indeed, in our current capitalist society, there are many ways in which the economy and the politics and the ideology reproduce capitalism and try to keep people away from those other class structures. And depending on how the capitalism is going, they are more or less successful. I hope this answers Darren's question, and as always, we are very appreciative, these days more than ever, about our Patreon community, our back and forth conversations, and the support that we all feel at Democracy at Work for what the Patreon community does in, with, and for us.